very pleasant good morning, good afternoon, and good evening sa ating sariling wika. Sa Tagalog, magandang umaga, magandang tanghali, magandang hapon, magandang gabi sa inyong lahat. This is to greet everybody around the world, whatever your time zone is and wherever you are located. Welcome to your hour, and this is Rita Gadi. Last week, we were discussing, not really discussing, I was on a monologue, and the title of our program last week was Where the Flowers Bloom. What I was revealing are anecdotes, snippets, as a matter of fact, of the lives of two important people of our government, both President Ferdinand E. Marcos and his lady, Madam Imelda Romualdez Marcos, from as far back as possible as we are able to record, and that was where they were born, when they were growing up, what they got involved in, where they studied, and so forth, where they excelled in even during their studies, and many other episodes of their lives until they met, a short courtship, a romantic 11 days, and then they got married, and so began the lives of these two people together. President Marcos at the time was running for the third term for the Congress, and that was the time that they got married. And that was when Imelda got involved in the world of politics for the first time in her life, although, as I've already described it, her family, her uncles and her grandparents were all in politics. As a matter of fact, the brothers of her father, one was a mayor of Manila, one was a writer of the Constitution, another one was, they were all involved in one way or the other. And of course, her first cousin was the Speaker of Congress at the time when she got married to Ferdinand Marcos. And then the story goes, after that, Marcos decided to run for the Senate. And so they were exposed to the national politics, where they had to go from one place to the other. That was last week. And I stopped short of the beginning of their life together as both Senator Marcos and Mrs. Marcos, and then on towards the presidential elections 2 years after he won the Senate presidency. I will break off from that for now because it would be monotonous in a way that we will be discussing or talking about just about one life or two lives. But now our title is Where Are We Going? I will still be going back and forth to 55 years ago because, as I've said, I am not a historian, but personally, professionally, and of course, as far as I am best able to relate to you what I know firsthand about the lives of these people and the life of our country, which happened 55 years ago, I will do my best to do so. But right now, we are going to talk about where we are going. Every news item in just about radio and television broadcasts and all the things we read, not just in the local papers, but also in publications all over the world, are all concentrated on the pandemic, COVID-19, which is understandable because every country in the whole world is affected by this. And as we open our social networking, when we open the Facebook, when we open our news channels, that's exactly what is being discussed. And then we have anecdotes of what's happening elsewhere, earthquakes and so forth, or several other items which are not related to this pandemic. But we take a break from that every once in a while because too many people are already involved in talking about this COVID-19 now, especially that another strain seems to have arisen from the mutation of this virus, which is understandable according to our medical experts, that the virus would be mutating, especially since there is a lot of travel that is going on in the world, even though some countries are very strict about this. So we have now what has come to us from the United Kingdom, from Britain. This is the UK virus, as they say, and several other viruses that have mutated coming from South Africa. So all of this is actually what is being concentrated on by media. But now, as I've said, let's go back and forth again in time and more forward looking, as it is important that we get adjusted now to this kind of life. There are so many items that are talking about the new normal or the normalcy or the normality, whatever it is. There's a columnist just today that is arguing about these two words of normalcy and normality. One word which is not in the dictionary, but which is now accepted as being used more often than not. So we do not go into that because what exactly is normal? Even during normal times, there will still be abnormal behavior, there will be subnormal, under normal, whatever it is. And normality is something which is, well, not a matter of perspective, but also a matter of the circumstance surrounding our lives. But now we're asking the question, where do we go from here? It's not just the pandemic that we're talking about, but many aspects in our lives which are affected, not just by the pandemic, but by ourselves, the way we are adjusting to this kind of environment and this kind of quarantine module that everybody has been subjected to in here in our country. Especially we have the general quarantine, the modified, the enhanced, and so forth. Whatever adjective is being added to it, it still is a quarantine environment that we have, and the landscape has to change as far as that is concerned. So every time the president speaks and addresses the people, it has always been together with the Interagency Task Force for Emerging Infectious Diseases and together with several other experts. Some of them come from the medical profession, others from the business sector, and they are all zeroing in on how best to adjust to the pandemic as far as our lives are concerned. And so here we are to ask the question again, where are we going? Well, how do we build a nation? We build a nation through infrastructure. That's exactly what President Marcos did in the first 4 years of his administration, 1966. Infrastructure was so important. And it was important for him because when he was campaigning throughout the country, first for the Senate, and then secondly for the presidency, he was traveling by land mostly, by small airplanes, by small certain boats from one island to the other. And that was where he saw how important it is to have the national highway constructed throughout the country, roads to be built, because there were several towns and cities which were very difficult to reach. And so, because of the condition of the road, so that was important. And then, of course, the ports, the airports and the seaports, that too was part of the infrastructure. And then adjacent to that would be the schoolhouses, because at the time, even up to this day, the voting precincts were held in the schoolhouses, public schoolhouses. So did we have enough schoolhouses at the time? So he foresaw this. And that was why the first thing he did to build the country, you had to be involved in infrastructure. And time again, we have seen that when you put together everything that was constructed during the 20-year period of President Marcos, as it has been recorded, he has combined all the major infrastructure as far as roads and bridges are concerned, considering the cumulative work that have been done prior to his administration and even after until this time. Here, during the time of President Duterte, that is exactly what he started. Build, build, build. Infrastructure, because the very idea of building a country is to build its infrastructure. So we have seen now the inauguration of several of these highways interconnecting towns and cities, the avenues of the NLEX, the SLEX, and then the skyways. Traveling time now from one place to the other, passing through the skyway. They say that if you go over the Araneta connection all the way to the NLEX, it takes only about 55 minutes. And that is quite fast, considering that you're passing through the skyway without any hurdles with traffic and congestion. So again, as you've said, the build, build, build is exactly where we are right now. Where are we going from here? Where other highways and bridges and other ports are also in the process of being completed. Hopefully, they will be completed by the year 2022, which is the end of the term of this administration, President Duterte's administration. But several other infrastructure programs will be continuing. They have been begun and they will be continuing until they're completed. So we already have the foundations then, 55 years ago until 35 years ago, before the Marcoses left, before President Marcos left for Honolulu. But that was exactly why we are trying to have this cumulative study of what it was to build a nation. So infrastructure is where we are going. We are going towards the future where our train system, remember that the first LRT that we ever had here in the Southeast Asian region was here in the Philippines. It was Mrs. Marcos who was responsible for getting the Belgian loan to construct the LRT. Since then, we've had also the MRT and several interconnecting LRTs, MRTs, and now there are trains that are arriving. I think 100 or so of these trains that will be arriving to augment the railway system to Cavite, to Caloocan, to several other center points where you have the exchanges of this light railway system and the metro railway system. So that is where infrastructure is building the nation. And as I've said, this began during the time of Ferdinand Marcos. It has been, well, they tried to continue this. We had the EDSA from one end to the other. But the other LRTs have always had difficulties. They had engine trouble, they had mechanical problems, they had problems with the trains, etc. Now, finally, more are arriving. This is from Spain and Mexico, I understand. And this will be augmenting, as you've said, the railway system. We already also have the train system all the way to Bicol, and there will be others that will be constructed connecting all of this railway system within the island of Luzon. And then in Mindanao, they will be starting this likewise to connect all the different provinces, cities in the island of Mindanao. So there you have the infrastructure already set. Where are we going? That is where we are going. Now we come to the political system, which has been established early on with the barangay as the democratic institution on the grassroots level. This was also undertaken by Ferdinand Marcos when he was president. And as he was traveling from one place to the other, he realized the importance of organizing as a political unit the barangays. What was the barangay before? It was simply an address, the barrio, as we knew it from before. So that when they ask you, taga saan ka, you, taga doon ako sa barrio na yon, or I belong to that barangay. It was simply an address. But President Marcos, by a decree, made it a political institution, a political unit, which is the smallest political unit in our democratic triangle. So if you look at our democratic triangle for political positions, you have something like, I think I wrote this down, something like 3 million officials that are being elected in the political unit known as the barangay. That is what is known as participatory democracy, democracy at the lowest level. Where else can you see a political institution which is based on the street where you live and on the next street? And this is the sitios. And then you have all these streets together adjacent to one another known as the barangay. And then you had the barangay officials, which are now voted upon by the people of that territory or that area. And they comprise something like 3 billion of them. You have the barangays, all the officials, all the tanods, etc., and all of that. And that is still the political institution that we have today. So that was already done then, 50 years ago, by the administration of Ferdinand Marcos, continued up to this day. The basic, fundamental political institution known as the barangay. Now there is a need to review or to refurbish the barangay law covering the barangays, or will they be completely abrogated and instead will just be appointed? At one time, you will recall that President Duterte got so infuriated by all the anomalies that were coming out from the barangays. And so he said, bakit hindi na lang i-abolish yan, i-appoint na lang sila para merong qualified people that will be running that political unit. So that's what's happening. So where are we going? That's exactly what we have to do today, and to find out whether we are actually going to continue with the barangay system officials, or if we are going to be able to amend the law and just have the barangay officials appointed at large or whatever. So am I losing my video? Hello? Is anybody in the studio? Can you hear me? Am I losing my video? I don't know, but I hope you can hear me. Anyway, this is what we are trying to put together now. Where are we going? So that we come down to the institution of the barangay, the most basic of our political units, and let's find out whether this needs revision or that there will be another change that will be happening. Oh, Sir Butch, hello. I can see you. Can you hear me?
Yes, Rita, good afternoon. I thought I might want to join you.
Oh, yes, of course.
I hope I'm not intruding. I was just
No, not
listening
at
to
all.
your
Yes,
presentation. Yeah.
yes.
Good afternoon and more power to you. I'm just
Thank you
here.
very much. Yes,
One of your fans. I'm watching you.
this is a tandem that both of us have this mutual admiration for each other. You know, we've come a long way, Sir Butch, and you know, I was just well, the title of our program today is "Where Are We Going?" So I was talking about the barangay, that is participatory democracy, but it will need a lot of changes now. It's not really now answering to our needs. What do you think of this?
Well, there will be a completely, I suppose, we can expect a different direction in the coming future. But but you're correct. I think we should go down to the very fundamental issues in order for us to not lose our focus and direction as a people. No? And like you said, the barangay is the only thing smaller than the barangay is the family. No?
The family, yes.
Yes.
Of course, we will go into that because that too is very important. But now we are confronted with this. There are two terms they're saying: the new normal, normalcy, normality, whatever it is. But we are entering into what is known as the digital technology. I wish Toti were here with us. Yes. Digital technology, and then virtual reality and artificial intelligence. These are three aspects of the cybernetica, actually. And instead of us controlling the machine, because this is part of the technology that we're supposed to use, the machine is controlling us. The generation that we have today, Sir Butch, are all involved in social networking. You have a lady that teaches you how to put on makeup, etc., and earns millions just by doing this on a daily basis. And you have some gay, happy people, and they walk down the street and they make jokes about each other, and they actually they propagate this. So this is the generation of our youth. When they open their mobile phones, they subscribe to this, they look at this. And so you could see that where is the future going? Where are we going from that? Will we have them elected into office with the social network? We just won the Philippine mobile games in Singapore, and now mobile games is supposed to be a subject that will be taught in college. Can you imagine the generation that will be involved in just the mobile phone? Your two thumbs, Sir Butch, that will just be operating on the machine that controls your mind. So, where do we go?
I suppose technology, if you consider that as a part of the development of, there are many things that have been transpiring in our generation, especially in the last 20, 30 years. No? The coming in of the internet, and then after that, and the electronic industries that have developed from that time on started to put certain things in our way of life. For example, not many of us, I suppose, can even imagine a type of existence without cell phones. No?
Yes, sir.
And then after that, even the internet, which is a source of information. No?
Exactly.
But a source of information that is
quite limited.
Good and bad.
Also very limited. We have a lot of fabricated and fake news.
Yes.
There is no way of checking this or finding out exactly the veracity of all of this. You're dependent on what comes out on the internet and all of this. And it's very limited. Because
that's why it's so important. What you were driving at is to go back to the basic and the barangays, because in those fundamentals are certain principles that cannot be changed by even by electronic developments and so-called new age type of industries, because those principles are still basically how humans and human beings are supposed to function in accordance with what we should be using. Like you said, it's humans must be in control and
Exactly.
not the other way around.
Other way around, exactly. The Greeks invented that word cybernetica, which is the mind that controls the machine. But what's happening now is the machine is controlling our minds. Anyway, this is related now to another, going back to the basics, because our system of education is completely changed. You have modules, modular learning, distance learning, and all of this. And apparently, I have three students here in my compound that are studying in public schools, and they go every month to get their modules, and then they're in distance learning. First, there is the problem of the internet connection. Even though they say that we are in the city, this is the urban center, they still have problems with that. Second, the modules are not comprehensive enough. And then you have the teacher at the other end of the line. I saw a 5-year-old boy, Sir Butch, who was really crying his heart out, saying, I want to go back to see a real teacher. I
Yeah,
want to go back to see my classmate. I don't like this, that. And then, of course, this is, yeah,
that's
you could
true.
see how even a child, a 5-year-old, is crying
Yeah.
to be in a classroom. But going back to that kind of a system of education, there should be a study now exactly how much of learning
Mm.
is sufficient for the education of the student, because the way it's going, it's only about 30% that's coming out from this distance learning. And the rest of the time is just, battling with the internet connection and trying to understand. Even the modules are so, I'm sorry to say this, Secretary Briones will probably slap me
Yeah.
on the head, are not so complete. I've read many of these modules because, as I've said, I've got three public school students here in my compound, and my goodness, it is not sufficient enough. Learning
Yeah.
and education are two different things. They may be learning something through this internet, etc., but they're not being educated, Sir Butch.
Right. I agree with you completely. Well, I was just thinking when this thing started and children had to stay at home and just watch their computers as part of their learning development. What is wrong there is that if you use a different medium of teaching, you necessarily have to change the curriculum, no? the not in substance and in form, no?
Exactly.
Because you cannot continue with the old method and the curriculum that you had, which assumed that you will have a classroom, and then all of a sudden implement it through a computer. No? You have to make those changes in order to adjust and be more efficient, effective in getting through the minds of the youth. No? We have not gotten through that yet. No? Maybe in the future somebody is going to do something about the curriculum and how this thing is going to be taught. No? They have to come up with something more innovative than just forcing the same curriculum, the same so-called method of teaching and into the computers. It doesn't work. No?
Exactly.
It doesn't work.
That is where the environment means a lot,
Mhm.
precisely because the ambiance that you have in a small 45 square meter home where everybody just eats, sleeps, etc. in that small space. Then
Mhm.
you have the dogs barking, and then some chickens rattling, and all of this. It's a different kind altogether. Plus, there is something that compels them, that restricts them, to just be concentrated on that little tablet that they have, or even in mobile phones, which is so conscripting. And I really sympathize with the students that I see that are grappling with their mobile phones and trying to find out exactly what is happening there. The teachers likewise are not, as you said, not yet adept to that kind of an environment. So they just try to finish off what has to be done for the day, but there is not that interaction, the emotional connection that they have with the teacher and of course with one another. But that's a different thing altogether. And as you said, Sir Butch, it may take a while until after this, but an assessment must be done by the Department of Education regarding this, because it is not going anywhere as far as educating is concerned, from my point of view. We go back, yes, sir.
Definitely, then that is a risk. That is a national security risk. Because we're are we going to develop a generation of idiots?
Exactly as Albert Einstein said.
Right. So and we have to make sure that the means that we now have is going to work for our development and not us adjusting to the means. Uh, we have to look for how to develop the mind, and maybe we can go back into history of man as to how man started to learn a lot of things, and really way back in history, even before the educational systems were set up.
You had the marketplace of ideas where they
Yes.
just stood there in front of everybody and brought out their ideas.
Right.
As you said, well, technology as it is could really develop a generation of Einstein, who didn't know that a computer would be one day invented, already said this: when technology takes the place of communication, then we are threatening to develop a generation of idiots.
That's it.
Communication, when technology takes the place, and that's where you have all of this thing of digital technology and artificial intelligence and virtual reality and so forth. And I was slapped on the head by criticizing this when they were telling me, but that's exactly how the airplanes fly, digital technology. That's exactly how you direct the wars of today. It's digital technology. But going back, exactly. Another topic which we have to return to basics. Other than the health problem that we're encountering, and this really should have gone hand in hand with basic health protocols, which is food on the table. Because if we have sufficient and enough nutrition on the plate, it doesn't have to be lengua or paella or whatever it is, just enough nutrition on the table, then that will take care of whatever health problems we may have in many ways. So going back to food, the Department of Agriculture have come up with, they love this repetition of things like build, and then Secretary Dar has this plant, and so forth, and that is tied up with balik ka na sa probinsya para magtanim. And then you have all the slum people being told to go back to the provinces, etc. and all. But that is where our agricultural program has failed. We are such a resourceful, naturally rich country in natural resources, and we have failed our people without enough food. And this is where we have to go back to the basics.
I agree, but you see, there has to be a coordination of our departments, and it has to come from the president. Like you said, it's nutrition, the necessary things to strengthen your immunity, if that's what you mean.
Yes, sir.
Having enough, doesn't have to be expensive food, but enough nutrients. Okay, we have a Bureau of Nutrition, and then we have a Department of Agriculture, but we also have a Department of Health. And when the COVID struck us, I was so flabbergasted and surprised that not a single time up to now did the Department of Health talk about strengthening the immunity naturally. Because that is the first line of defense.
Exactly.
Not these lockdowns and so on and so forth. The first line of defense is to tell the people you have to have these kinds of diet because these kinds provide certain vitamins. And these ones, it is not cheap, it is not expensive. Make sure that you're able to take this vitamin. If you can buy the vitamins, that's fine. But if you don't have that and you can only have the ampalaya or whatever else, grow it because this is going to provide. I was thinking that the coordination of Department of Health and Nutrition, no, and Agriculture can get should have gotten together and focus on that. No? What they did was completely, well, like I said, this so disappointing. No? Because up to now nobody is talking exactly what you're saying, Rita, about the nutrition quality. We tend to look at Department of Agriculture of having failed, and I would agree up to that extent. But in this time of crisis, somebody has to make compass. Somebody has to direct.
Yes,
No?
it should have been done immediately in the first month, as a matter of fact. You mentioned agriculture, and then you had the nutrition. We have a nutrition council, and then
Yeah,
you have education. But then, of course, we also need the TESDA. Instead
yeah,
of going into all these highly skilled and technical crafts, etc., do you know that you could plant petchai when you cut a plastic bottle in half and just put, and you can plant petchai there. You can have
yeah.
several of these bottles. You can eat
Abs-
that on a daily basis and a weekly basis. The
Absolutely.
green leafy
I,
vegetables,
I,
anything, okra, you can plant that, talong, you can plant it, kamatis, you can plant it. You don't need the wide open fields out there, you know,
right.
and your windowsill where your roof is on top of the roof because this needs sunshine. And all
Okay.
of this, they should have undertaken that immediately. Yes,
Immediately.
plant. Where? No,
Yeah.
when we heard this plant, but my goodness, it came out with all the highest state of the art equipment, state of the art machinery, etc. And also for we had, and one thing, they have kadiwa, but where is kadiwa? Only in certain areas. We should have kadiwa stores in every barangay where you have already the transshipment of the harvest from the fields directly there. If
Yeah.
it's not possible because they sold the kadiwa, the food terminal, then this could be done on the local government unit where every town will have its own. Well, now you need freezers for the vaccine, but if you had
Yeah.
freezers then you could have had the containment for all of these food products coming from the provinces without having to go through middlemen. So that will really have to be. That is where are we going? Going back to basics. That's exactly how it is. The livelihood program that Mrs. Marcos instituted with a drum of gasoline at your backyard and aeration that you use for your aquarium, you
Yes.
could already raise fish.
Yes.
And you could plant in your backyard, and they had it during the time, and
Yeah.
the livelihood was to give these small loans.
Uh,
Magbebenta ng sigarilyo, magkano? 3,000 para makapagpatuloy ka magbenta, kakanin sa bilao. How much was that? And they pay. Their face is their capital. It was done before. That's why I say I keep going back and forth, because these are programs which have been done. And if we go back to basics, that
yeah.
is where we can begin all over again.
It,
Precisely. Anyway,
it's so sad. It's really so sad that maybe the only conclusion many of our people get into uh, is to say that we are focused on importing the vaccine, uh, and pushing people to lock down and in effect they destroy the economy and more people have actually starved, and the cause of massive deaths is really the lockdowns and not the COVID-19 itself. No? But nevertheless, if we're now waiting for this vaccine, we're already seeing that the vaccine doesn't have the kind of miracle uh, cure that they have been announcing, and that they are now adjusting their efficiency or efficacy, and whatever it is.
exactly.
It's so disappointing now because
Really,
people are so confused.
they had this questionnaire, like, when I take the vaccine, will I still have to wear a mask? Yes. When I take the vaccine, do I still need a face shield? Yes.
Yes.
When I take the vaccine, do I still have to be quarantined if I'm of this age? Yes. When I take the vaccine, do I still have social distancing? I can still not associate with other. Yes. Whatever is it for? So that you do not contaminate other people, but I'm not leaving the house so that other people will not contaminate me. But supposing we're all vaccinated. Anyway, that's a long, chicken and egg question, actually. And vaccines do not really cure. I mean, we know this in time. That has been our experience. That's been its history. But let's get down now for this economic recovery thing, which everybody is still waiting to really understand. If only there would be half the session with the IATF precisely for the vaccine, for the health protocols, and the other half, the president will tackle now in common language and common sense. Okay, ito ang budget ninyo. Magkano kinikita mo? 500 sa isang araw lang, halimbawa, or so much for a month. Okay, how do you program this? This is where we come down to the basic. Saan malaki pumupunta? Sa renta, if you're renting, sa bayad sa elektrisidad, sa bayad sa tubig, and then sa pagkain. And see, so then it is interconnected now. If only the economic managers will explain to us and give us the solution. Here we are with the KDP. Yang pagbabayad sa elektrisidad at sa tubig, ang laki na sana ng ating matitipid kung aayusin yan. Precisely.
Yeah, exactly as you're saying. We in the KDP have said that it is the KDP that has proposed yung mahiwagang bakuna. No? Because we've been waiting for the magic vaccine and we know it's not going to fix up our economic situation. But for almost a year now, have been pushing for the mahiwagang bakuna. The mahiwagang bakuna, just to refresh your listeners, if they have not heard this, Rita, is the implementation of Article 12, Section 17 and 18 in our Constitution. That article and those sections mandates the government to declare a state of emergency on health and on economics, and it is very explicit, and that the state of emergency will require for public utilities to be turned over back to government for its management, which necessarily means that the government now will bring down the cost of electricity, water, and telecom and whatever. It is mandated. No? The president has the power now using that constitutional provision. And over almost a year now, he has refused. Why is this the case? Because the oligarchs are in control of these public utilities. And he may be not too sure or not courageous enough to confront them and say, we will take it over. And I am implementing this constitutional provision to save the lives of the Filipino people. Give me a little bit more. I will explain it very briefly as fast as I can.
Yes.
Just to give you an idea, Rita, that in electricity alone, these 7 or 8 companies in the power sector are collecting 1.5 trillion pesos every year.
Wow.
1.5 trillion pesos, both from us, the consumers, and from businesses that are also consumers.
That's gross.
That's yes, gross. That's based on an average of every family paying up about 3,000 pesos a month on electricity. Every household. Now, every household or family, we have something like 20 million households because 100 divided by 5, and so 20 million, you multiply it by 3,000 pesos, that's already 60 billion pesos a month. And then you just double that to assume that the businesses are also consuming that much. Actually, it's much more than that, but just to make it easy, So they are collecting 120 billion pesos a month from us.
Wow.
Okay, and multiplied by in 1 year, that is close to 1.5 trillion pesos, just on electricity alone. Now, knowing that we are paying the highest electricity rates in the world, we are paying double that of the United States.
Oh, wow.
So the president can bring down the electricity rates by 2/3, more than 50%. No? So instead of uh, collecting 1.5 trillion, we will collect only 500 billion pesos a
How can
year.
this be done? How can you bring it down by half?
No, you just lessen the rates. You just take off the rates. If if you're paying 3,000 pesos,
Government manages it already, yes.
it can be because you're not going to fire the people that are operating it. You're just going to take over the management and control. Now, what happens is if 1.5 trillion is being collected, only 500 billion will be collected. Where does the 1 trillion go? It goes back to the people as their savings and the businesses as their savings. So that is like 1 trillion pesos every year given back to the people and businesses. This is money that is not borrowed, so we don't have to pay for it. This is also money saved, but that is not printed. So it is not inflationary. It is a boost to the economy. No amount of gimmickry that Sunny Dominguez, the finance secretary, can do to borrow money from World Bank or ADB, can he ever reach borrowing 1 trillion pesos every year? And yet this is only from electricity.
Electricity, yes.
If you add water and if you add telecom, we can save for the people close to 2 trillion pesos every year. And this is the mahiwagang bakuna. What you boost our economy with that, and it starts to turn. No, and this is the way you will do it because businesses will be cutting down their power and other rates, so they now have more money to expand and to accept more workers, more labor. No? And this is the way, this is the direction that we have. But what do you do with these oligarchs? You know, the oligarchs, you cannot say they are inherently bad, but they are rapacious animals. No? You have whatever food you give them, they will gobble up. They don't care who else needs that food. No?
Precisely.
So what you have to do is redirect those energies and capabilities into the beneficial industries, no, that we need, like
agricultural production.
Yes,
Food production.
Agro industries, steel
manufacturing, yes. Copper smelters.
Fertilizer, pharmaceuticals.
Fertilizer, oh yes. All the 11 basic industries that already lined up by the NEDA.
Right.
50 years ago, as a matter of fact, they could get into that. But you're so correct, Sir Butch. To simplify that explanation you had, it is just returning back to the people, which is the government, the management of public services for the service to the public, not public services for personal income. You're very correct when you say that, there's nothing wrong with earning, but do not earn from the people. That's oh hello, hi, I missed that little girl. Yeah, she was whispering to her ear. I miss her so much.
She keeps on whispering to my ear, but later when she comes back, she'll say hello.
Yes, I miss her so much. Yeah. Anyway, so that's exactly it, Sir Butch. We don't need any economic changes in the provisions of the Constitution. As you said, it is already there. There are other provisions in the Constitution which need amendment or change. And one of them is, for instance, the party list. Second, of course, is the ideological base for political parties. Third, of course, is to reduce the members of the legislature so that you do not have this conflict with the Senate and the Congress, bicameral, etc., and all of this. And then, of course, the party list system. And now we're facing another election next year. And
Yeah,
nothing has been done with what has happened with the Comelec and Smartmatic. Why is it still there?
it's
I mean,
really sad. It's really sad.
where are
And
we going?
it seems that they will not be getting out, especially because what had happened in the United States. Uh, Imagine if they can do it in the United States and in a very blatant implementation of the cheating machine. No? They can,
Exactly.
of course, do it here again, no? And elsewhere in the world. No?
Oh dear.
That is the message the rest of the world is getting from that. But going back to what you were saying, yes, we really need to get this. If there are charter changes, it better be on those areas that you had mentioned. There is,
Justice and
there is,
holidays. Yeah.
there is however, one very surreptitious plan by some legislators. I don't know if this is coming from the president or it is just them. That among the amendments they want to put in, is to allow 100% foreign ownership on public utilities. Eh?
Oh my goodness. That's
This
worse than
will,
the Atira, though.
yes, this will negate precisely what we're saying about our constitution, and that the government can take over. Because if it is foreign owned, it makes it that much more difficult, to implement something like this. And that's why I said this is a very dirty move, if that is what they're saying, because you are actually cutting off the capability of government to be able to save its own people. No?
Exactly. It is not only dirty, it is idiotic and insulting. You
Yeah.
mean to tell me that after 129 years of our republic, we still
Uh-huh.
cannot manage our own public utilities and our public services? That we
Right.
have to turn it over to foreigners? We have already been 300 years under Spain, 45 years under America, 5 years under Japan, and up to now we have not learned the lesson that we can manage our own. Oh my goodness, I'm getting ballistic over this, but
Yes,
as you said,
it really is
yeah,
sometimes, sometimes even us in our own program, uh,
you cannot help but
we,
scream.
that Toti leads the way.
I
Toti
see
leads
him.
the way in his expletives.
I know, and he bangs the table. So yeah. But
but
that's exactly how we feel.
yes, that's how exactly how people feel. No?
Yes, you have all of this fuss about whether the military and the police should enter the university. What should enter the university are these ideas for the
Yeah.
students to take up the cudgels for the people.
Yes,
For the students to march into the streets and say that electricity should be managed by us.
that's
These are
right.
so basic. That is where we ought to go. That is where we are supposed to be going. And that
You,
is why we keep going back. The
you
time
know,
was, yeah, when all of this was managed by government, was it not? With Nawasa. We
yeah,
had Nawasa, we had Meralco, which was a
right.
foundation which was handling this by the government. And
That's
it was a
right.
foundation which provided only 5 pesos per electric bulb for the poorer communities. But
Mm,
all of these public utilities, even the LRT and all of this, were handled by the people, by their government, not by the oligarchy,
that's
not
right.
by vested interests who control our politics. That is where the constitutional reform should come in.
Uh,
That this will no longer happen, that the money of the oligarchs will be financing the people who will be appointed in Congress to protect their own interests. How
that's
sad
right.
it is. Where are we going? Well,
Uh,
now is the time to go there, where the ideal actually is.
well,
Katipunan ng
you're correct.
demokratikong Pilipinas.
Well, I don't know if we have time yet, but just a little item that I wanted to
Yes,
add in
10
when
minutes we have,
you were
yes.
saying that this youth in the university should be actually going into the streets to fight for these issues.
Exactly.
I was asking there, about this number of people that have surrendered the NPAs and so on and so forth, and they are of pretty high-ranking people and are involved in a lot of operations. So I was asking him in an interview in our program. I said, why is it that this so-called leftists, this NPA, who used to be angry at the way the oligarchs are enriching themselves at the expense of the poor and so on and so forth, why is it that they are now quiet with regard to this? No? Whereas I would think that whatever we're pushing in KDP, they will be pushing as well, right? And then he had the smile in his face and he said, because the leftists, the Communist Party of the Philippines and the NPAs are being paid by the oligarchs.
Supported, yes.
They are receiving 500 million pesos a year minimum uh, in an extortion arrangement, right? Like a protection racket. So they will not say anything about the oligarchs because they themselves are getting enriched by it as one of the principal sources. So that's the reason that these people are not real ideologues. They're just extortionists.
Terrorists, as a matter of fact. That is how they go about the protection of their basic of their businesses, protection for their industries and so forth. For the cell sites, for instance, that's exactly what the president said, that they pay so that their cell sites will not be bombed. And that's exactly how they survive. Communism as an ideology simply holds ground only as an ideology. You have the countries of the Russian Federation and you have the People's Republic of China. What better way of expressing capitalism to its hilt, except in those countries? So if you're going to use communism as a basis for all the development that's happening there, it's completely wrong. It is something that they try to utilize, just so as they could have some kind of a platitude or a rallying cry over them. And our military intelligence should be wary of this, because it is not wrong to be a communist, but it is wrong to be an extortionist. And they should remove that communist adjective. So that is how it has been reduced to. Exactly, it is just an adjective. It was fun at the time during our generation. It seemed to be the in thing, the way flower children were also part of that. But it's gone. It's been 55, 60 years ago when this was, what it was. But that's no longer there. So why cling to something like that anyway? So, Sir Butch, that's how it goes. Where are we going precisely at this stage? Well, I was recommending at the beginning of the program, if only half the statements of the president would be yes for the health protocols and the vaccine and the COVID-19, and the other half would be the self-reliance that we need on our own by his initiative.
I agree. Yeah. And maybe through your program and through our collective effort, we can continue to enlighten the people as to how to think rather than wait for what to think. Because anyway, as you can see, the mainstream media now does not have any more ideas. They don't discuss these things in an intelligent manner, and they only are very superficial. Our own mainstream media here. So it is up to us, I think, to continue to do this. And even if it is the effort of enlightening the people is not done through the streets, through mass rallies, I suppose if your tribe increases and we continue to be influenced influence others, maybe it will be big enough for the nation to start demanding from our leadership what needs to be done. Right now, it's politics. It is money that is in control of our leadership. We must realize that there is some time that they must follow us, follow the people, and maybe we might have a better future after that.
Well, very well said, Sir Butch. I miss those words. I miss you. There's always some very high degree of enlightenment every time you come to fore anyway. So thank you so much for having joined us now in this hour. And we will continue to be doing this, Sir Butch. And I hope Yeah, next week, maybe the four of us could get together.
Yes, yes.
Now
I'll
that's
let them know.
possible. Yeah, but Toti and RJ and Lenny Rojas could also be part of us.
Yes, yes. Why not? I just saw it in my email,
Yeah.
and I said, "Oh, Rita's going to be on air. I want to see her," and I joined, and also to greet you.
Yeah.
Well, more power to you, and thank you very much. It was a privilege to talk to you again on air, no?
Yeah.
And I enjoy it because I am inspired, no? That we can continue talking in this level for our people.
Very good. So now that we've started this, maybe next week we can tell Bear and everybody there in the studio. Let's have the quartet together the next time. Okay.
Yeah, it's still your program, but we will come in as your guests.
Yes, I could guest in your triumvirate. Anyway, thank you very much, Sir Butch Valdez, our president of Save the Nation, our president of the Citizens Army, whatever we call it, the Citizens Guard, and of course the Katipunan ng Demokratikong Pilipino. So to all of those who've listened to us and will be listening again over the internet and Facebook and whatever accounts there are in social networking, maraming salamat po. This has been your hour, and this is Rita Gadi.
Bye-bye.
Bum 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 ba da ba dum bum ba da ba dum bum ba da ba da ba da ba da ba dum bum 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 bum